Iran just enriched uranium to 89.2% at the Fordow underground facility. This is the closest any non-nuclear state has ever come to weapons-grade material without crossing the line. Every missile in the Middle East, every defense calculation in Washington, every arms control agreement signed in the last 30 years runs through this 1 percentage point. The IAEA released an emergency assessment confirming enrichment at the Fordow fuel enrichment plant, buried inside a mountain near Qom, under approximately 80 meters of rock and reinforced concrete. Weapons grade is 90%. The gap is now 0.8%. At current centrifuge speeds, that gap closes in less than 48 hours. Iran possesses over 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. If processed to weapons grade, that stockpile produces enough fissile material for 10 to 12 nuclear weapons. The centrifuge cascades have been reconfigured. Monitoring equipment has been disconnected. Inspector access has been restricted. Over the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly what 89% enrichment means in weapons physics, and why the next 72 hours may be the most dangerous since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now here's what we know. The physics of enrichment are not opinion. They are mathematics. Natural uranium contains 0.7% U-235, the only isotope capable of sustaining a nuclear chain reaction. Enrichment is the process of concentrating that isotope using centrifuges, spinning uranium hexafluoride gas at extreme velocity. The critical detail most people miss is this. Enrichment gets exponentially easier as purity increases. Going from 0.7% to 5% requires approximately 75% of the total work needed for a weapon. Going from 60% to 90% is the final sprint. The physics get easier, the centrifuges work faster, the timeline compresses. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi, speaking at the Board of Governors session on March 2, 2026, told reporters, "We are now measuring Iran's breakout timeline in days, not weeks or months." The ground reality after that statement is that NATO consultations immediately increased to emergency frequency. So why does that matter right now? Because at 90% purity, uranium achieves supercriticality, the point where a chain reaction becomes self-sustaining and explosive. A simple gun-type device, the design used on Hiroshima, requires 50 to 60 kilograms of weapons-grade uranium. More sophisticated implosion designs work with less. Iran's stockpile numbers in rapid fire. 440 kilograms at 60%. Current centrifuge capacity of 68,000 separative work units per month. Full stockpile conversion to 90% in 3 to 4 months. One bomb's worth from 89% to 90% in under 48 hours. The Fordow facility is the detail that matters most. It sits under 80 meters of granite and concrete. Conventional bunker busters, even the largest in American inventory, may not penetrate. Iran chose to sprint toward weapons grade at the one facility America cannot easily destroy. That is not coincidence. That is calculated. But the capability reshaping this entire conflict is what it carries inside. Iran has worked on nuclear weapons design for decades. The Ahmad program, their covert weapons research effort, was officially halted in 2003. But knowledge does not disappear. Scientists do not forget. Documents do not evaporate. If covert design work continued, and most intelligence agencies believe it has, the weaponization timeline could be far shorter than any official estimate. David Albright, president of the Institute for Science and International Security, stated it plainly. Iran's breakout capability is now measured in days. The ground reality is that classified briefings to congressional leadership have moved to daily frequency. Here is where this gets structural. Most people assume that 89% enrichment means Iran is still one step away from a weapon. That enrichment is the hard part. In reality, Iran does not need to build a weapon to change everything. They need to prove they can. One detonation, one test, one flash of light in a remote stretch of eastern Iran. It cannot be denied. It cannot be dismissed. It cannot be ambiguously interpreted. Iran becomes a nuclear state in an afternoon. The entire 30-year prevention effort becomes meaningless. Intelligence analysts are tracking specific indicators, movement of high explosive components consistent with implosion device assembly, activity at facilities linked to the historic Ahmad program, preparation of potential test sites in remote eastern Iran, communications patterns suggesting weapons program acceleration. Iran's delivery math makes this worse. Over 3,000 ballistic missiles. The Shahab-3 reaches 1,300 kilometers. The Khorramshahr reaches 2,000 kilometers, putting parts of southern Europe in range. Miniaturization for missile delivery requires additional engineering. But a stationary test proves capability without it. Once capability is proven, the world must assume missiles could eventually carry warheads. Most people assume America's 5,500 nuclear warheads deter any Iranian use, that a single Iranian bomb is irrelevant against the world's largest nuclear arsenal. In reality, one weapon does not let Iran win a nuclear war. It lets them prevent conventional defeat. That is enough. America cannot invade a nuclear state without risking nuclear response. Israel cannot conduct regime change operations against a nuclear Iran. Gulf states must accommodate a nuclear neighbor. 40,000 American troops in the region become strategic hostages to Iranian nuclear restraint. That sounds manageable until you look at the proliferation cascade. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman stated explicitly that if Iran develops a nuclear bomb, Saudi Arabia will follow suit. A nuclear Iran triggers Saudi Arabia, possibly Turkey, possibly Egypt. The Middle East transforms from a region with one nuclear state to 3, 4, or more. That cascade cannot be stopped once it begins. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is already strained. If Iran crosses the threshold despite 30 years of international pressure, every aspiring nuclear state learns the same lesson. Build fast enough, and prevention fails. Weather the sanctions, survive the pressure, get the bomb. North Korea proved the model works. Iranian success confirms it. The 21st century could see 20, 30, or more nuclear-armed nations. Quick, before we continue. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Your support is what keeps this going, and I truly appreciate you watching. Please subscribe and like so I can keep bringing you these updates. Now apply that to the cost equation. Now let us talk about what this costs, because the numbers here are more alarming than anything happening on the battlefield. 40,000 American troops deployed across the Gulf region. Daily operational expenditure running into hundreds of millions. Carrier strike groups positioned in the Strait of Hormuz choke point. Every barrel of oil passing through that strait now carries a nuclear risk premium. That sounds expensive until you look at the interceptor math. Iran's ballistic missile inventory, estimated at over 3,000 units before hostilities. Each missile costs a fraction of what each interceptor costs to defeat it. Multiply across thousands of rounds. The asymmetry is structural, and it is permanent. Here's the dimension nobody wants to calculate out loud. A crude nuclear device requires 50 kilograms of weapons-grade uranium. Iran possesses 440 kilograms at 60%. Converting one bomb's worth from 89% to 90% takes less than a weekend. The cost of that final enrichment is negligible. The cost of failing to prevent it is measured in trillions and decades. This is not a Middle Eastern issue anymore. It is repricing the global economy in real time. At the March 19th press conference, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told reporters, Iran no longer has the capacity to enrich uranium. Netanyahu did not provide evidence for that claim. The IAEA's own director, speaking one day earlier on March 18th, stated that the agency does not know the status of Iran's new underground enrichment facility in Isfahan because inspectors have not been able to visit. There is a 24-hour gap between what is being said at podiums and what is landing on the ground. That gap is widening every single day. America's options narrow with each hour. Option 1. Massive strikes on Fordow, Natanz, and all known enrichment sites using the largest bunker busters available. Problem. Fordow may be too deep. Strikes may not reach centrifuges. Iran may have already moved material to unknown locations. Option 2. Covert sabotage and cyber attacks. Problem. Iran has hardened against cyber operations since Stuxnet. The timeline is too short for sabotage to prevent breakout that occurs in days. Option 3. Negotiate immediately. Problem. Iran has no reason to believe American promises while bombs are falling. Pausing gives Iran time to cross. Option 4. Accept nuclear Iran. Politically impossible for any American president. Israel acts unilaterally. Proliferation begins. Option 5. Ground seizure of Fordow. The 500,000 troop scenario. Full-scale invasion. Consequences measured in decades. Speaking on CBS Face the Nation on March 22, 2026, IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi stated, "Iran's nuclear program cannot be eliminated solely by military action. The ground reality is that every military option leaves enrichment knowledge intact." Fordow, 80 meters underground, 440 kilograms at 60%. Centrifuge cascades reconfigured, 89.2% confirmed. Breakout measured in days. 3,000 ballistic missiles. One test changes everything. 5 American options, all of them terrible. The question the world has to answer now is not whether Iran will cross 90%. It is what happens when a regime spending negligible cost per percentage point of enrichment runs out of reasons to stop before the world runs out of options to prevent it. Do you think America should strike Iranian nuclear facilities now? Or has prevention already failed? Let me know. Thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe and like if you want to stay updated. Click the video on screen to see another. I will see you soon.